Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Thanks,
Just wanted to take up a few points on this. The first thing I noticed, one of the first things was, as something that's come up here is kind of controversial, is how many times can somebody take the survey was kind of, but to play devil's advocate, people, we just don't know who did it. So, I mean, we can keep guessing, but I think we kind of know from folks that come up and that speak kind of what residents are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at it that way, I mean, to do a survey, statistics, we don't need 50,000 people to do that. Surveys can be done on very small numbers. My biggest concern, I think, with the survey is kind of relating back to the question that asked along the lines of, are the services good for your property values? I think the survey missed the point. Shouldn't it be the services that the city provides adds to the quality of life to you as a resident, to your family, more so than your home values? I think that's where the priority should have been, is the quality of life of the city, not the property values. If we're looking at this from a standpoint of money, dollars spent just to improve somebody's house, I mean, we're still failing there because, if we had a highly successful performing arts center, property values would go up. If individuals can buy power from the power company at a reduced rate like corporations do, property values would go up. But we missed the point on the survey. The quality of life, really, I think, is what should have been there. The question regarding law enforcement, it talked only about 911 calls. I'm sure more calls are probably made on routine calls versus 911 calls. I don't think that would have changed really so much the outcome of the what people are happy with the services they get from law enforcement. But I think we should have asked about non-emergency services. And I really don't know why the monorail and the rapid transit were on there. I mean, for a decade, we spent how many tens of thousands of dollars trying to push this maglev train? I mean, and now we're asking for a monorail. I mean, this isn't Disneyland. We really don't need a monorail. Senior and recreation services combined to one question. I think when most people think recreation services, they think youth programs. Senior programs, I think, are a little bit different and a different targeted audience than, youth softball. And then lastly, the demographics referring to the age. Our senior services generally start at age 50, but we didn't set the demographics up for that group of individuals from 50 and above. So we actually had those 50 and above in two categories, and I think that won't give us really a good answer on that. And that's all I really have to say on this, other than I think we really missed the mark in not asking about quality of life, but instead asking about home values. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council. A couple things first. I want to thank the mayor for a while back. He was brought to his attention, cut council benefits, look at those to be cutting them. They got put on the table. The council voted on that unanimously. So I appreciate that, and I wanted to mention that. But then as I was going through my notes, I didn't notice it brought up here on the presentation, unless I missed it. Council benefits, that is, being part of the suggested cuts. So maybe that was an oversight. Maybe, hopefully.
Well, they haven't been cut yet today, but they will be as part of the process. Is that right, Mr. Gleach?
What we're working with is PERS. We had to send a letter to PERS. Remember that we have to remove ourselves from the council participation in PERS. That takes a procedure we're going through.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to note. We can't even change our own benefits without getting permission from the PERS in this particular case. Or we can't change any wages or benefits for any employees that have already been negotiated or they already have. You can't,
right.
Council can't change that. We can change it for something going forward. And we've already done that with new employees coming in. They have to pay for their benefits where the more senior employees don't. That'll take a decade or two before senior people retire out and new people come up. So there will be savings, but it'll take
Right.
a number of years. I know you understand that, but I just want to
I
clarify.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Among the reduction possibilities, recreation, library, Sky Night, sheriff station, Magnolia plant, CP has the Performing Arts Center, and so on. The main one that really concerns me is the water, privatizing the water. I mean, I don't think we want to go there. I mean, as somebody running for the water district, seeing privatization is just a horrible, horrible thing. When corporations take over and start selling our water and then bottling it and selling it back to us over at Ralph's, we don't want that.
But that was a suggestion made
Right,
by
yeah.
a number of people.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, please don't.
Well, and I think another thing that's important too is we did pass an increase on fees. And again, for people to understand, 3 years ago, we were losing over $2 million a year selling water to the residents. And that looked kind of
Right.
strange. And we have no deferred maintenance fund. So we've implemented this increase that happens over a number of years. It'll take us another 3 years probably before we break even on water. We're still losing money on selling water. But I'm 100% with you. I would not even consider, in my opinion, because it's water, that's the most important thing we have as an asset.
Absolutely.
Without water, we have no city.
Our natural resources like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Although I will say on those comments there, I would rather as a resident, as somebody who cares about the community, that the water gets subsidized more than the auto dealership, the mall, and so on. I mean, the Performing Arts Center. So, but I think you know that.
Makes sense.
Among, not suggested on here, don't know if it's possible, we still have empty land over right across the street there. Is there discussions of developing that to bring in revenue? There are a couple parcels, I believe at least, sitting, just right across the street in the town center that look like empty lots that something could be built on. I don't know if that's a discussion at this point to bring in revenue or not.
It's part of the process to expand sales tax.
Right.
If we can get people to come in. Today, we don't have a redevelopment agency, so now the developers have to come in like the apartments did and spend all of their own money, including covering all the fees, where 20 years ago, we subsidized a lot of that. You can't do that anymore. So it makes it more difficult to get new people coming in, even though I can tell the community, I'm absolutely thrilled and surprised in the last 3 years how many new developments have come into the city and built here. That's shocking. If you look around the city, all of the developments, all the centers, the shopping centers and whatever, even the auto mall, they're spending all of their own money to do all of that. And that's going to help our sales tax increase also.
Right, I think.
But
with
you're
the
right,
city
there are
doing
pads over there that are available.
Yeah, with the city doing these things happening in the city here, as well as surrounding communities building up. They just took out the tanks over there in Santa Fe Springs, and I'm sure whatever they put in there will draw traffic this way for businesses. I would like to see an emphasis also, on some type of light industrial as well as professional offices and so on to bring in higher income workers on some of these new developments, and even where we have light industrial as well, instead of focusing so much on retail with lower wages as well. And I know it's about the sales tax.
It's all about sales tax.
But unfortunately, we put ourselves into that position
Yes.
through redevelopment, trying to get that increment, and which is really what got us in a mess, which was my other point. I mean, we blame the recession, we blame the state for taking away redevelopment, although we knew, as a city, councils before you knew that redevelopment was never meant to last for eternity, that they had clocks on those. And
You
those
get
clocks
another
ran
minute,
out.
I mess with your time.
Oh, I appreciate it. Maybe we can do 2.5, but no, I'm kidding. And one other thing too is looking at this budget is maybe people don't really totally understand. We're actually really looking at two budgets here. It's not just one budget. We're really looking at two budgets. We're looking at the city general fund budget, and then we're looking at what used to be the redevelopment. I'm not sure if it's the redevelopment trust fund and so on,
Zero.
combined together as $100 million. Is that
That's true,
correct?
but the redevelopment is to pay down bonds.
Right.
There's no new development money in there at all. There's no maintenance money in there at all.
But part of what we're trying to do is subsidize those redevelopment projects, such as the Performing Arts Center, the Magnolia Power Plant with general fund money now because we no longer have redevelopment.
That all comes out of general fund.
Right.
Correct.
But at one time it came out of redevelopment, and that's the huge issue there is when I was looking at part of the presentation that was online, it mentioned, basically the foresight, the proactive planning that had been going on. Well, I don't think that was really happening because we really knew that we were in a mess and nothing was really happening at that time. We kept, as the gentleman said earlier, we just kept, as a council, not we, but as a council, those that set up there before, kept pushing it off and not wanting to make decisions. So for 8 years, they deferred maintenance. For 8 years, they kept subsidizing various things like the Magnolia Power Plant, the Performing Arts Center, and so on, that keeps digging us deeper and deeper into the hole. And at some point tonight, you have to make a decision. I mean, let's quit prolonging this. And as it was said before, you were elected to make the decision, not to keep prolonging it. And that's what we want you to do, is make the decision up or down, put the sales tax on, or don't put it on, because really prolonging this, I mean, you're really just getting the same answers, the same responses. We're really going nowhere. We're just spinning our wheels. We just need to make a decision up there as a council to either put the sales tax on there or don't put it on. And if you do that decision tonight, we can move forward either with figuring out what's going to happen if the sales tax passes or doesn't pass as a bond, or if you say no, how are we going to get to where we need to get in the budget? So up or down, please, tonight, vote on the sales tax. Thank you.
That's the plan. Thank you. Our next person is Jaygray.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The last budget item definitely was a tough one to make, and it's what we ask you to do is make the tough decisions. Not everybody's happy. I'm sad to see, and hopefully it comes back in some form or another, the Freedom Ring celebration or something to that effect. John Adams said after the Constitution was signed that I believe it should be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. As he wrote to his wife, Abigail, it ought to be celebrated with pomp and parade, shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations, fireworks. We can't even do fireworks here, 4th of July. It's although with the Constitution sitting up here. Tough decisions. We have 3 people up here that have been here for quite a while in the council, over 8 years. 2 of them aren't happy with what happened with the Sheriff's Department. Remember, you had 8 years, 12 years to do something. You chose not to. A lot of this burden rests on you. Remember that. So don't get upset. The big budget busters on here that we're having to deal with for the proposing a 1% sales tax. The CCPA, the sales tax is going to do nothing more than subsidize non-residents' ticket prices. It's going to do nothing more than subsidize visitors to the Astor Museum. It's going to do nothing more than subsidize the law enforcement needs over at the mall. It was already mentioned, 20% of law enforcement deals with problems over at the mall in the auto center. Subsidize the power utility bills. There's, as it was just mentioned, there's no guarantee it's going to trim our trees, fix the sidewalks. Go over there on Brookhurst, right off the 183rd as you go over the bridge. Look how horrible. It hasn't been touched probably in 15 to 20 years. Shameful by the Public Works Department and for the city manager to allow that. You have sidewalks raised about a foot. A foot. Deferred maintenance, that's beyond deferred maintenance. That's neglect. That's willful neglect of city property. Shameful. The CCPA, until you decide to put on a tax, over at the town center, as we mentioned earlier, there's still pads open. Maybe we need to open this a little bit more than just to look at the CCPA. Maybe we need to develop that entire area, maybe redevelop it to bring in revenue instead of just thinking about it as the Performing Arts Center by itself. Maybe we need to look at it as a whole, some type of developer to come in and develop all that and redevelop the Performing Arts Center to bring a draw in. The power plant, sunk cost. I think the mayor kind of mentioned if we can get $1 million out of it, or maybe that was the Performing Arts Center, but I think the same philosophy, we don't have to keep taking the losses. I think that's definitely a philosophy that needs to be looked at. Get rid of it. If we can lose less on it per year until we're done, that's great, but it's a sunk cost. It was mentioned earlier about, decision-making, decision theories. Well, what about our SWOT analysis of all of this? What are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats on the city for income and when we cut expenses? Have those been looked at? Well, we've really not heard anything about that. It's just cut, 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 raise taxes. What are the strengths? What are the, where are we at? You have Los Alamitos looking at sometime in the near future building out where the racetrack is. I was just over at a meeting at the council last Monday. They talk about that all the time over in Cyprus there for the racetrack. When that comes in, I mean, what are they going to put in there besides houses and buildings and everything else that will take revenue possibly from the city, or will it bring revenue into the city? Santa Fe Springs, as I mentioned earlier, off of Bloomfield, where they're tearing out all the tanks. What are they going to be putting in there? Will that help the city? Will that hurt our city income? Have we even looked at that as far as the opportunities go or the threats to the city? Long-term planning. We got people complaining that the sheriff's department is going to be moving out of the station here, but you had 8 years to do something about the power plant. You had 8 years plus to do something about the Performing Arts Center. This just didn't sneak up on you today. Fortunately, we have at least 2 people, and I know Mrs. Chin voted as well to help out, but we have 2 people here that have been here less than 4 years now, and it took this to get this far. It should have never got this far. It should have already been done, and we wouldn't be having this meeting today. Thank you.